GPR could be compared with a carpenter's stud finder used to locate the beams under a floor. Pausing every few yards, the antennas send a signal into the ground. But the ground they must cover will add up to endless miles of constant stops and starts.
This area is confronting us with some problems that at times have seemed insurmountable. Our geophysical teams have been crisscrossing the countryside, trying to find evidence, trying to correlate its information with the satellite data. So it's at times gotten a bit depressing.
For the next 2 years, for 2 months in the spring and 2 in the fall, the slow parade continues. Modern technology may give the team a leg up in the quest for the first capital of the Shang. But in the past, the search for Shang relied on footwork of another sort. Investigators reasoned that the only way they could learn more about the Shang was to find out where all the oracle bones were coming from. Medicine shop owners finally admitted the bones were being dug up at a town now called Anyang. Why was this obscure whistle stop bursting at the seams with inscribed animal bones? To find out, a series of excavations began in 1928, an archaeological dragnet that continues to this day. Recently, investigators discovered a Shang cemetery on the outskirts of Anyang. Here, Tong Zhigen sifts for clues to the average lives of ordinary Shang people.
This
is a typical burial of an ordinary person of the Shang dynasty. We found these 2 pieces of pottery. These were used for cooking.
Tong Zhigen hoped somewhere in this maze of earth and death lay clues to the fall of the Shang. The discovery of this cemetery is a direct result of the search for the oracle bone stockpile that began here 70 years ago. Countless fragments were uncovered by the 1930s. Unearthed at one site, a solid 3-ton mass of inscribed shells. Then, after years of digging, an even bigger find. Huge tombs were discovered. Although largely emptied by looters, one grave contained giant bronze vessels. The discovery astonished the archaeological world and whet the appetite of tomb robbers across the countryside.
With the discovery of oracle bones at Anyang, I think it must have had something of a Wild West look to the area. In the 1920s, this part of Henan was beset with bandits and warlords. Antiquities and treasure hunters descended on the area in order to find the treasures and sell them to the antique shops in Beijing and to foreign buyers. When archaeologists were finally able to move into the area, they had to do so under police and military protection.
Just working in Anyang was a misery for visiting scholars from the West. One of them wrote this description.
The yellow dust flies so thick, one can hardly see 10 feet ahead in a tearing gale that threatens to fling one to the bottom of a 30-foot pit.
The excavations came to a sudden end in the late 1930s. The Japanese invaded China. On the heels of the Japanese defeat came a bitter civil war. While China fought for her life, Anyang would have to wait. At Anyang, the quest to learn more about the Shang began again in 1950. Then, in 1976, came a discovery that surpassed all others. At the bottom of a deep pit called Tomb Number 5, archaeologists discovered treasures that lay undisturbed for 3,000 years.
The discovery of Tomb Number 5 at Anyang might be compared to the discovery of the tomb of King Tutankhamun in Egypt that contained riches beyond archaeological belief. It had been unlooted, and so for the first time archaeologists had a sense of the richness that the royal tombs of Shang held. Hundreds and hundreds of bronze vessels, as well as large quantities of jades, ivory objects, and other wonderful works of art.
This figure gives hints to formal Shang posture and costume. The Shang believed that jade prolonged life. The stone was crushed into powder and consumed as a magic potion. While their jades were brilliantly fashioned, they were no match for the miracles created from bronze. Bronze was treasured above gold by the Shang. Its strength and versatility made it the ideal medium for ritual vessels. Shang kings had no interest in seeing themselves portrayed in bronze. Artisans were instead given the freedom to explore a world filled with fantastic beasts and monsters. Hundreds of tons of these ritual vessels were created, but how the Shang managed to mine the raw materials to make them baffled archaeologists until a chance discovery was made in central China. It happened at the town of Tonglishan, a backwater in Hubei province. In the 1970s, workers discovered ancient mine shafts at a local copper facility. Scholars believe the Shang created sites similar to these. Based on fragments of smelters discovered, archaeologists recreated the ancient ovens. They showed the early Chinese had the know-how to force metal from ore. The status of a Shang king was based in part on the number of bronze pieces he owned. The search for its raw ingredients, copper, tin, and lead, knew no bounds. Ore deposits were within the determined reach of the kings. Like an ever-consuming black star, Anyang is at their center. Investigators concluded they had found the last and most powerful capital of the Shang. Finally, a window on the lost world of the Shang was opened. A palace compound was exposed, and over the original foundations, the buildings were recreated. Anyang housed the royal bureaucracy, a host of bronze artisans, thousands of slaves and peasants, and vast armies. Shang forces attacked their neighbors with great swiftness. Archaeologists uncovered exciting proof of this in Anyang. Here are chariots so valued they were buried as sacrifices near the tombs of the kings. How the Shang built them was at first a puzzle. Not a single nail was found. Research now proves chariots were meticulously assembled with wooden pegs and leather lashing, a marvel of ancient technology. 18 spoked wheels and wooden axles were coated with animal fat to reduce friction. During the early Shang period, chariots served as mobile command units, surrounded by close supporting infantry. Bronze weapons were created for maximum impact. A phalanx of dagger axes cut the approaching enemy to shreds. Depending on the direction of the stroke, Shang warriors could slice off an arm or deliver a fatal wound. the identity of one of their fiercest commanders was confirmed at tomb number 5. Inscribed on its bronzes was the name